Back here on One Bills Live, Chris Brown, Steve Tasker, along with ESPN NFL Draft analyst Jordan Reid, who's got his top 50 prospects out, regardless of position. And it's hard not to notice some perceived positional needs of the Bills kind of falling in your 20s range, right around where the Bills are picking.
That's why you're here, man.
Yeah,
absolutely.
We're liking your feel right now.
Now, look, Bills fans, to a large degree, ever since Stephon Diggs got traded off the roster, have been wide receiver obsessed. Most people believe if they do get a receiver, they're looking for a bigger target. Mm-hmm. I know you've got Denzel Boston in that range. Casey Concepcion's a smaller player, but electric and a big-time separator. And then you had another guy in there. I'm trying to find him in the range. Jordan Tyson was up too high. But there was one other receiver you had in the general vicinity. But what do you make about what you think could fall to Buffalo at 26? I know that's a lot of picks to predict, but I'm guessing a lot of edge rushers are going to get scooped up here early, so that cupboard's probably going to be bare from a value standpoint. So I'm looking at some of Buffalo's other positions like linebacker, off the ball, and then wide receiver and maybe even nose tackle.
Yeah, I actually think Buffalo's in a great spot from a receiver standpoint because I think that second wave is probably going to start right where they're picking at the end of the first round. And your big three right now are Mekhi Lemon out of USC, Cardinal Tate of Ohio State, and then Jordan Tyson out of Arizona State. But after that, I think there's a really good second wave. You talked about Denzel Boston and Casey Concepcion already, but Buffalo is in a great spot, even in the second round. I think this is a great draft for those big X boundary receivers, somebody that Buffalo was looking for. I think somebody like Malachi Fields out of Notre Dame, who was exceptional at the Senior Bowl. Ted Hurst out of Georgia State was probably second or third round pick.
He's not even here. How surprised were you by that?
Yeah, I was surprised by that. And
is there a little bit? Is there a little bit of? I'm sorry about Chris Brazzell. Is there a little bit of gamesmanship you notice? Because I know that we went through this last year with a couple of players where teams are saying, all right, you invite these guys, you invite those guys, you invite those guys, and the teams will deliberately not invite the dude so nobody sees him.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's funny just because, just thinking about this receiver class with Buffalo, I like guys like Ted Hurst.
Sure.
I think he's somebody. Chris Brazzell is somebody that I like quite a bit. But if they do want to take somebody like in the second or the third round, I think would fit really good for him is Chris Bell out of Louisville. Even though he has
coming off the ACL,
right now, if they do want to be a
get
little
good
bit
value
patient,
on him,
good
though.
value.
Yeah, right. He's
if they do want to double up, even if they want to double up,
220 guy, heavy, right. And I think one of the things that we talk about big X receivers, and everybody says, well, he wins all the 50-50 balls. Yeah. The problem, we'd rather have guys that win. That are open.
Yep.
When they get, you'd rather have guys that you ain't throwing it up for grabs. Mm-hmm. Quarterbacks don't like that.
Right.
Yes, it's great when it's desperation. You throw it up and he goes up and gets it. But you want guys that can separate. Give us a rundown. Are there big, strong X receivers who are separators as well, or do they specialize in that physical play?
They mostly specialize in that big physical play. Brazzell is probably the one that's your true separator as far as that can run down the field and get those 50-50 balls, but also separate as well. Those other guys are more so run down the field vertically, throw it up, let them box them out and win the ball or be a ball winner. So Chris Brazzell definitely is the only one in this class that I would feel comfortable as far as that. I would even throw Malachi Fields in there out of Notre Dame too. I think he has some separation aspect, but that's more so in the short to intermediate areas.
What did Fields do that really – because I know he was playing in largely a run-first offense at Notre Dame, so his production wasn't going to be great. But what did he do? What was he able to turn on and showcase at the Senior Bowl that had people buzzing by the end of the week? I mean, a lot of people felt he was the best receiver on the field there.
Well, everybody knew that he could run down the field, but nobody really – or he didn't show consistently what he could do in the short to intermediate areas. But the physicality that he displayed when guys tried to come up and press him, it wasn't just that, but he was able to do what I like to call fight pressure with pressure underneath and just overpower a lot of players. He has really strong hands, which is what you want to see from those big body guys. So not only was he able to be a three-level threat down the field, but also the short to intermediate areas, he was able to answer that question.
Let's talk a little bit about guys keeps popping up in the conversations. Chris Brazzell from Tennessee, 6'5", so he's a big dude, 200 pounds.
So he can run.
And he's fast enough for, like the 4.3, 4.2 guys sometimes have a hard time changing direction because the speed and the velocity are too much. 4.5 is one of those where you get guys that can really Steph Diggs was like that. The guys who are separators are those 4.5 guys because they're just slow enough to put their foot in the ground and really change direction fast. Brazzell seems to be on that list of guys who is like that. At a 6'5" target is big. It's really big.
He's what's different about him is that he's kind of been boxed into those Tennessee receivers, just run vertical, those wide alignments. He's far from that. They actually changed their offense up a little bit for him just because of how well he was, not only down the field, but in the short to intermediate areas as well. So you're seeing him snap off routes and run in all different directions. He's doing things in the short areas, and then you add on the dynamic of him being able to just run past everybody too. So I think there's a lot left to uncover with him, but as far as being in an offense like with Joe Brady that's going to showcase him as a 3-level threat, I think it would be a great fit.
Yeah, my guys like that, guys that tall don't have to go up and get it. They're already up there.
Yeah.
Right. You know?
I want to flip to the other side of the ball because we talked about how the edge cupboard might be cleaned out as far as first-round value is concerned. And there's going to be a need for the Bills to land a nose tackle, switching to a 3-4 under Jim Leonard, the new defensive coordinator. And you've got some interesting guys here in the 20s in your top 50. You know, Lee Hunter, Texas Tech. And then later on, you've got Caleb Banks, who's an intriguing guy whose last season got cut short, you know, due to injury there and surgery on his foot. And then even Caden McDonald, who some people have even higher than where you have him at 32. So could there be someone in the wheelhouse there that would fit the value at 26? You don't see nose tackles going often in round one, but the Bills have a major need there because I think there's some doubt as to whether Deion Walker at 6'7" can play the nose where you really need a tree stump guy in there.
You need somebody that has a little bit more leverage than what he does. Him being so tall, that takes away a lot of his leverage. And he naturally plays high as well. That's something even going back to his days at Kentucky, that was always the big concern with him. But Lee Hunter is somebody that I love in this year's class. I have him at 23. My next update is probably going to be even higher.
Okay.
Honestly, I think he's a first-round nose tackle all day long. And you hear the names like Jacob Rodriguez and Romello Hyatt and David Bailey, but the player that was the hub or the centerpiece of that defense was Lee Hunter. He was the one that allowed all of those guys to maximize their role and really play so freely just because he's eating up those double teams and he's occupying so much space. So if you're looking for a true nose tackle that can come in and play right away, I definitely think he can be that. But also, I think he's underrated as a pass rusher too. Now,
I noticed he got some pocket push.
He's more of a pocket pusher. Now, he's not going to be a guy that goes out and gets 6 to 8 sacks a year. He's not going to be that. But for somebody that can what I like to call suffocate the pocket, he definitely is able to do that.
What about Banks, the kid that had the foot surgery, only got 2 games this year, but a lot of good junior tape.
Yeah, without question. And you know, he was limited to 2 games last year, but you go back and you turn on the 2024 tape with him, I think he's easily one of the most talented. It's just a matter of what player am I getting?
Right.
And I think him going to Mobile at the Senior Bowl, showing that he's fully recovered from the foot surgery that he had in September, I think that was big for his stock.
How many and how deep does this defensive, like I say, nose tackle, interior defensive tackle, how deep does this class go? And because you've got a lot, Brownie was just saying, there, you look down this list.
It's like 10, 15 guys that are over 320, but do they have draftable grades is the question.
Right. I mean, I'm not asking them to run a 4.2 40. I think they can run a 5.2 40. Nobody cares, right? But their burst, their athleticism down inside. How deep does this class go?
I think through about round 4, you feel good about somebody that can come in and give you a bulk of snaps as a rookie.
Right.
Speaking of names like Dante Corleone at Cincinnati and even Dominique Orange at Ohio State, also known as Big Citrus, one of the best nicknames in this year's draft class.
They call Corleone the Godfather.
The Godfather. Yeah. Some great nicknames in this nose tackle class.
Yeah.
So you feel good about those guys, 3rd or 4th round. You feel good about them. Even Darrell Jackson Jr. at Florida State, he can play nose or he can play one technique.
It has happened in recent years. The Bills draft, when in their high draft picks, they draft traits, guys that have measurables, height, size, weight. So when you get down there and you need a nose tackle, that's kind of where you start. You got to go early and get the one you want because 1%ers are 1%ers. You know.
I know McDonald from Ohio State. As you mentioned in your top 50, he had the highest run stop rate for all defensive linemen in FBS. I know the other guy, Hunter, I think was right behind him, or maybe it was Caleb Banks. I can't remember. And McDonald played well in the playoff games. I mean, that guy was holding it down, just standing in there and grinding with 2 offensive linemen so his linebackers could run and hit. When you're putting up tape like that in a playoff game against the best of the best, I have to imagine that elevates your stock considerably. Like, what are you hearing from scouts about his game? Because you've got him kind of in that late first-round range in terms of overall rankings.
So he actually could go as high as 16 to the Jets, but so also he could go at that beginning of the second round as well.
Why do you think there's that variance? Is it because of scheme fit, or?
That, and it's just the lack of true pass rush skills.
Okay.
He's not that true pocket pusher like what we said with Lee Hunter.
Okay.
He's more so of that stalemate guy at the first level, which is why he's so good as a run stopper. But when you're taking a guy in the first round, you want them to have some type of promise as a pass rusher a little bit. So you want a little bit more as a pass rusher. But you know right away as a rookie, he's going to change you schematically as a run stopper. It's just a matter of where exactly do you value that.
Yeah, because I wonder if the Bills look at it differently, because let's not forget, this is a team that finished 28th against the run last year, and they're making a scheme change, and teams were all too eager to run on them. Like, you better take care of that. And if you can't get the perfect guy that might give you a little push in the pass game, well, the hell with it. Get him off the field on third down and figure it out.
Right. Yeah, and that's going to be – there's 2 things working against the Bills right now. They don't know who can play in a 3-4 yet, and they don't know who they can draft. They got to learn how to – they got to teach the guys that are even here that they don't know about how to play first before they can evaluate if they can. Right? So there's a mountain of things to do, but this is a team, in Bills, if you're talking to them, they've got so many needs, they can go anywhere they want, basically, defensively. If there's a stand-up linebacker who, is going to be there at number 26, even if there's a run on these guys, I mean, where do you have to go and how far do you have to go down to get a guy that's weighing 240 pounds, who's 6'2", and can run, the kind of guy you need as a inside linebacker in a 4-3, 3-4.
Well, this linebacker class is exceptional. I think there's a lot of depth in this year's class. And it's not just in the first round. You hear the names like, Arvell Reese and Sonny Styles, depending on where you have Reese, whether he's a linebacker or edge rusher. We know those guys are going to be well gone off of the board by the time the Bills pick. So now you're getting into C.J. Allen out of Georgia, who's a run and hit, 2-down guy that does need to get a little bit better in pass coverage. I think there's a lot of promise there. But as far as a run stuffer, I think he's one of the better ones in this year's class. One of my personal favorites is Jake Golday out of Cincinnati. I think he's being very underrated in this year's class. Anthony Hill out of Texas is another name that potentially could be there in the back end of the first round for the Bills as well. So there's a lot of depth in this year's class. But one name I think they're going to like quite a bit, and I think he ends up going in the second round, is Josiah Trotter out of Mizzou. He's the son of 11-year veteran Jeremiah Trotter, who had an outstanding career. Only 20 years old. He was a redshirt sophomore when he came out this year. So that young centerpiece, like what we saw when they drafted Tremaine Edmonds a few years back, he was very young. That's something that they liked about his draft profile. It had a lot of promise as well. So I could see them having a lot of interest in Josiah Trotter out of Mizzou.
Speaking of Mizzou, Zion Young's a guy that I've seen with a wide variance of getting ranked. I've seen him as high as the top 20, and I've seen him in round 2. Another guy that, by all accounts, had a pretty good Senior Bowl week. Why do you think there's wide variance there? Is there some element of his game that's not quite developed as pros would like? What's the hang-up there for the wide variance of ranking?
It's just how confident you feel about the pass rush upside of him, just because right now he's just getting by a lot off of natural traits, natural ability.
He doesn't have a repertoire.
He needs to improve his hand usage and his deployment of moves. And what you're hoping is, with NFL coaching and proper coaching, that unlocks another layer to his development.
Okay, that's a good answer. You got him as your 40th prospect, probably because he does need that work, and it's a projection at the end of the day. But that guy, he was screaming off the edge at the Senior Bowl. I was like, whoa, I could sign up for that dude, and he's just playing off pure ability. He wasn't even doing moves, Steve. He's just beating people, running the hoop.
We appreciate you, Jordan. Thanks so much for sharing some time with us. Have a great week here at the Combine. It's going to be busy.
Absolutely. Thank you guys as always.